Good morning. This is a recording from Monday, April 15th. Let's continue deciphering our shame triggers, and today we will do it through the lens of vulnerability. Brené Brown writes, recognizing and understanding our triggers is essentially the same as recognizing and understanding our vulnerabilities, and this is a source of strength. Vulnerability is not a weakness. Sometimes we're afraid that acknowledging that something exists is going to make it worse somehow. For example, if I acknowledge that being perceived as a good mother is really important to me, and if I accept the fact that motherhood is a vulnerable issue for me, is the shame around this issue going to grow? No, that is simply not true. When we experience shame, we often feel confused, fearful, and judged. This makes it very difficult to access the awareness we need to evaluate our choices. We are in a fog. That's how shame makes us powerless. But if we know our triggers well, and we recognize that what we're going through happens in an area where we know we're vulnerable, we are much more likely to come out of that confusion, fear, and judgment with an instinct about what we're feeling and what we need to do to find support. This is how a couple of Brené Brown's research participants described the importance of recognizing their triggers or acknowledging their vulnerabilities. Here is one example. I only see my therapist 3 or 4 times a year, one time after each trip to visit my parents. I know they love me, but I also know they use shame and judge me about being fat and unmarried. I make the trips for all of us, but I see my therapist afterwards for myself. And here's one more example. In my second year of fertility problems, I finally accepted the fact that I couldn't go to baby showers. When you're in your early 30s, it seems like there is a baby shower every weekend. I found myself going and making an ass out of myself. I would talk about how great it was to have the freedom and flexibility of not having kids. I'd ask stupid questions about the horrors of labor. The only person who knew we were trying to get pregnant was my best friend. After one particularly bad shower, she confronted me. She said I was being mean and not like myself. She asked me if it was about the fertility problems. When I realized it was, I had a total breakdown. She helped me through it. She also helped me understand that it was okay to not go to all the showers. It's not just shame resilience that is increased when we acknowledge our vulnerabilities. Several other fields of study, including health psychology and social psychology, have produced very persuasive evidence on the importance of acknowledging vulnerabilities. Health psychology studies show that perceived vulnerability, meaning the ability to acknowledge that we are at risk, greatly increases our chances of adhering to some kind of positive health regime. And in a very interesting series of social psychology studies, researchers found that the participants who thought they were not susceptible to deceptive advertising were in fact the most vulnerable. The researchers explained it this way. Far from being an effective shield, the illusion of invulnerability undermines the very response that would have supplied genuine protection. And this is a very counterintuitive concept because it challenges everything we are so used to thinking about vulnerability. Judith Jordan points out that acknowledging vulnerability is possible only if we feel we can reach out for support. To do so, we must feel some competence in our relationships. In other words, if we don't have people we can trust in our lives, or we have yet to build those kinds of relationships, we must reach outside of our existing connection network of friends and family for professional help. Therapists and counselors spend a large part of their practice helping people identify and understand their vulnerabilities. And as a result, they're frequently able to help clients build or identify relationships that can serve as connection networks. For most of us, to successfully begin to recognize and understand our shame triggers, we first need to accept that acknowledging our vulnerabilities is an act of ordinary courage. When living mindfully, vulnerability is not a weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage. So now let's explore this together. Take a comfortable position, and as always, take a few moments to settle. Settle into your body, your heart, your mind. Settle into this moment, right here, right now. Let your breath be soft and relaxed, completely natural, so that you can start finding this spaciousness, freedom in your breathing, allowing all the experiences of the present moment to flow through you as energy that they are, without struggle. Now bring to mind something that makes you feel vulnerable. Maybe it's your financial situation at the moment, or maybe you're having troubles with your spouse. Whatever it is for you, something that makes you feel so vulnerable that you haven't even discussed it with anyone for the fear of being judged. As you bring to mind all the details of your vulnerability, start noticing what happens in your body. See if you can stay with your direct experiences, however uncomfortable they are, even if it's just for a few moments at a time. Remember, it's like being a scientist, collecting the data that flows through your body and mind. Nothing is good or bad. Everything just is. So with that in mind, notice, what are your physical sensations right now? What's happening to your breath? What's happening to your heart rate? What area of your body seems the most vulnerable? What are you thinking right now? Is there a certain embarrassment, shame, fear of judgment? If you could express your vulnerability through a pose or a movement, what would it be? And don't just think about it, actually do it. Assume that pose or do that movement. Remind yourself that vulnerability is not a weakness, that it requires a lot of courage to share an uncomfortable truth. Courage and discernment who to share this with. But once you do, the reward is invaluable. We all need a sounding board for our life problems and a support circle that will help us deal with them in a better way. How do you feel in your body now that you reminded yourself of your innate courage that goes hand in hand with vulnerability? Where in your body does this courage live? If you could express your courage with a pose or a movement, what would it look like? Take a moment to actually do it. Now place your hands on your heart and send yourself the energy of loving kindness for being here, for doing this challenging exercise. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well in body and mind. May I feel loved, cared for, at ease. May I know that I am enough. May I touch deep, natural peace. And as you gently let go of your practice, as always, scan your body and notice what's going on for you right now, physically, emotionally, mentally. How are you really? Today, I invite you to stay with this reflection. To successfully begin to recognize and understand our shame triggers, we first need to accept that acknowledging our vulnerabilities is an act of ordinary courage. And also continue with your work through the 12 shame categories I posted yesterday, along with the self-reflection questions Brené Brown suggests. I'm sure this powerful work will bring forth enormous benefits into our lives. Enjoy your discoveries, and as always, if you're willing to share your thoughts and stories, please do so. Remember, your voice, your stories are extremely important to all of us. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a gorgeous day, and I will see you tomorrow.